Back here on HQ, it is time to dive into the latest CBS Sports MLB Power Rankings. These are Matt Snyder's Power Rankings, the NL West, taking those top two spots with the Padres and the Dodgers. The biggest riser award goes to my Atlanta Braves, up 6 spots to number 18, just swept the Twins. Despite a little social media drama that we'll get into a little later, the biggest faller that goes to the Twins. And the Royals, KC, down 5 spots to number 22. They are 2-8 in their last 10. All right, let's welcome on Matt Snyder and David Samson. And we were starting at the top, gentlemen, with the Padres in that top spot. Matt, this is a team, of course, better at home than they are on the road. But how big is that gap between number 1 and the number 2 Dodgers?
Almost non-existent. They're neck and neck. I just had the Padres won last week, so I thought I would stick with them. They have a better record, better run differential, a better bullpen right now, probably the best bullpen in all of baseball. The starting rotation looks really good. Fernando Tatis Jr. would probably win the National League MVP if there were such a thing through April 20th. Thankfully, there's not. But it's really close. I expect the Dodgers are going to win the NL West probably rather comfortably. They're the better team overall on paper. They have more depth. They have more talent. But I just have the Padres very, very slightly ahead right now as to how they've played so far this season.
I really love the April Power Rankings, Matt, because it covers all sorts of ills. The way we tried to look at it is that you didn't want to get yourself buried in April, and so but you couldn't win a pennant, but you could lose one. And I'm looking at what the Padres are doing, and this was critical for them to have this sort of start because everyone assumed it was going to be the Dodgers from pole to pole. Will they win 116 games and tie Seattle? And having San Diego hang with them, I think that's why it would merit the number 1 spot. But again, I find it to be fleeting, and I'll bet you $1, Mortimer, that when you do your rankings next time, the Padres will no longer hold that spot.
All right, Matt, that brings us to the Dodgers. They're up 4 spots to number 2. I know you said you think the Dodgers are eventually going to win the NL West, and the race is tight. Again, it's April. There's a lot of baseball left. But Matt, tell us about the Dodgers and maybe give us a preview. Are they probably going to be number 1 come next week?
Probably. Yeah, that's what it's headed. Like I said, I could have put them number 1 this week, but I just kind of felt like I would leave the Padres there. Like, first of all, I love David using a Trading Places reference. That's pretty awesome. Good slip in there. The Dodgers have most talent. Like I said, their depth is being tested right now. I don't think that they wanted Knack, Miller, and Robleski to combine for 4 starts on the mound so far, but that's just where they are. They haven't scored that many runs in the past couple weeks other than against the Rockies at home when the Rockies are the worst team in baseball. They have some concerns in the lineup in the 7, 8, 9 spots, but this is all nitpicky, and they're a half game off of having the best record in all of baseball. That shows how talented and how deep they are.
Yeah, I think that when we're talking about the Dodgers, the biggest differentiating factor is always depth. It's what that level of payroll can bring. You don't want to have to test your depth in April, but you know you can't control it. And Matt, what you just said about who's getting the ball over 162 times in inning 1, forgetting openers and forgetting things like that or double headers. The reality is that where the Dodgers will be able over the period of time between now and October to truly separate themselves from the field is as that depth becomes tested, not just for the Dodgers where it's currently being tested, but by all the other teams they're competing with. Because as the season progresses, you've got lack of performance, you've got injury, you've got all things that are crushing to a team during the course of the long slog that is the baseball season, and the Dodgers are simply positioned best to withstand it.
So as of right now, it is the Padres at 1, the Dodgers at 2. The gap is very, very close, so we could see a change, of course. If we look at the top 10 as a whole, for the first time right now, the Yankees, they are back into the top 10 after having a 6-1 week. They're at number 5. We see here on Matt's Power Rankings. Matt, when you play for the Yankees and you're in that market, there's always high expectations, right? And I was seeing a lot of headlines prior to this week about folks, hitting the panic button maybe on the Yankees. Were we maybe panicking a little bit too soon for the Bronx Bombers?
In a wide-open American League, which is clearly the inferior league, people were panicking a couple weeks in the season in New York. Oh, no, get out of here. Yeah, look, they're probably the best team in the American League right now. And again, it is the inferior league this season, and I think it will continue to be through the season, but they can still make the World Series because it is a thin league. They lost Juan Soto from last year, but look, Paul Goldschmidt's stepping up right now. Ben Rice looks like he might be for real here in his second year. Trent Grisham is absolutely not going to keep hitting like this, but hey, it's been a nice find so far to start the season. Max Fried stepping into that ace role to fill the void with Garrett Cole going down from injury, and Carlos Rodon looked great last time out. Some concern early on about Devin Williams, but I think he's ultimately going to be okay at the back of the games. The Yankees might well be the best team in the American League.
I think that when you're talking about the Yankees, you have to talk about their starting pitching, and I find Rodon to be extremely inconsistent. I think everyone does. And what you're seeing with Max Fried, there's been no adjustment period. He stepped in. He was signed to a contract right after Soto defected over to Flushing. And what he's done is pitched like a number one, like an ace. And the question is, can he hold up? There's been questions about durability. Obviously, forget the 8-year deal. I think that's what it is, Matt. It's a totally outrageous number for him. But the reality is, can he carry this rotation through the course of the season? The other thing I'll just mention, cautionary tale about the Yankees. I don't want to rely on Paul Goldschmidt to be a significant contributor through the course of the season, and I worry the protection for Judge. He can say all he wants about how he's got protection and everything's okay. But really, losing Soto and not having Stanton, that actually tends to create a problem as the season continues. So I view where they are in your rankings as really another moment for April, and I just don't think that they're a top 5 team as the season progresses.
And Juan Soto and the Mets, they are sitting at number 3 on those power rankings. Let's talk about the biggest riser, and that goes to the Atlanta Braves, up 6 spots to number 18. Matt Olson starting to get going. Spencer Strider is back. We got Ronald Acuna criticizing his manager on social media and then deleting it. So, Matt, with all that in mind, are the Braves back?
Maybe. I mean, obviously, they dug themselves quite a hole with that start. I mean, 0-7 to start the season. Now, it's tough to go to San Diego and then go to L.A. to face the Dodgers to start the season, but you probably like to say a bad trip to start the season would be 2-5 or even 3-4 instead of 0-7. So they're having to kind of pull themselves back up, try to dig out of that hole. But look, they have not played that many home games. They're 6-2 at home. As you said, Spencer Strider's back. Matt Olson's starting to swing it. Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley's starting to swing the bat. Acuna will be back soon. I'm not worried about the tweet and deletion there. Whatever. People can get emotional at times. It happens. Chris Sale's last start wasn't terrible. Step in the right direction. Starting to get a little bit right. They're much better than the record says still, but I assume the correction will continue to come.
Yeah, here's the thing about 0-7. You can't make it all back in a week. And when you have a 7-game losing streak, the front office mentality is this. You're going to have a 7-game losing streak at some point during the season. You'd like it not to be in the first week. And what you say to the guys is, listen, we're just trying to have a winning week, a 4-3 week. If we can squeeze in a 4-2 week, that would be great in a 6-game week. If you can get a 5-2 week in a 7-game stretch, you're basically just trying to slowly but surely get out of it. It's what you say to players when they're in a terrible slump to start the season and they have to stare at the Mendoza line every time the Jumbotron goes up. You can hide a cold streak in July. You can't hide it in April. The Braves, to me, are still going to be there. But, yes, they are fighting something. And what they're fighting is that nobody's ever made the postseason after starting 0-7. Only 2 teams out of the 28, I think, ever had a winning record. So they're definitely fighting history. But this is a team that has a great trade deadline acquisition coming in Acuna. Having Strider back will make up for the fact that Sale will not be in contention for the Cy Young again this year. So I'm bullish on the Braves.
And we talked about it starting 0-7. It's not where you want to be. And you alluded to it, David. No team has ever been in the postseason with that sort of a start. But if we pull up the odds for the World Series here, the Braves there 14-1, the 5th best odds to win it all. And David, I know you said you're still bullish on the Braves. Matt, do you still like the Braves as a potential World Series contender despite the historically awful 0-7 start?
I still think that they can make the playoffs, but man, that's awfully aggressive there to have them 5th on the board. It's an uphill, like ahead of the Cubs, ahead of the Padres. They're interesting. I don't know about a deep playoff run, but I do think that they're going to probably make the playoffs, maybe as the last wild card in the National League at this point, because Padres are going to be one of those wild card teams, and that is a huge hole that they started in there.
Yeah, the gauntlet in the National League is going to be very interesting, but I would just remind everybody that October baseball is just crazy. And we're talking about the Dodgers, the dynasty of the Dodgers. They were at risk of losing in the first round. They were at risk of not advancing, forget winning the World Series. And don't forget 2 years ago, the Dodgers, sans Ohtani, but they got swept by the Diamondbacks, is my recollection, because Betts and Freeman, I think, went like 1 for 69. So anything can happen in October, but 14-1 is way too thin for me. I was hoping to get value there at like 30-1, thinking they could get hot in October. And side note, being a wild card team in the National League is going to be an advantage this year. You're not going to want to actually rest after the season. You're going to want to ride through, get hot, stay hot, and be hot. So I think that's an advantage for the Braves.
Yeah, the Braves know it well. Having that time off and then going right in and playing another team there in the postseason has not ended well for them the last couple of seasons. Let's talk about some of the fallers, because we have the Twins and the Royals as the biggest fallers here. Both of those squads down 5 spots. So, Matt, lay out your concerns for both of these teams, starting with the Royals.
Yeah, the Royals, they lost 8 of 9 before Sunday, but those were all road games against good teams, the Guardians, Yankees, and Tigers. Bobby Witt Jr. needs more help offensively. The only other player over 100 OPS plus is Michael Garcia. The team as a whole is hitting .210. That is just not going to cut it. They have a really good bullpen. There's good pieces in the rotation between Lugo, Reagans, Waka. They can probably pitch even better than that, but they have got to hit a lot better than they have been hitting, and Bobby Witt Jr. needs more help. David mentioned Aaron Judge needing more help in the Yankees lineup for protection. Witten definitely needs a lot more than that. And you look at the Twins, it's been a while since they've been good. It was about the second week of August last year when they completely fell apart. They have major injury concerns throughout the roster. Their most talented players, Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, they're always banged up, and they're having those issues again to start the year. I just don't think they're that good of a team. I'm not counting on any sort of a bounce back. I don't think they're going to be in the playoff picture.
Yeah, Matt, I'm completely with you on the Twins. I would tell you that they're not even a consideration to really talk through. They're not going to get better in terms of injuries. Injured players tend to get injured. Even if it's not the same injury, you have to stop kidding yourself. And believe me, I was the most delusional president you could ever be, saying this year will be different. It's not going to have that level of injury or lack of performance, and then it just creeps up on you. My bigger concern is with the Royals, the regression you're going to get from Lugo, who was, in my mind, the best free agent signing last year from a value standpoint, what he did with that contract. But we're talking about a pitcher who is a middle-of-the-rotation guy. That's realistically where he is. Bobby Witt, we talk about as an MVP candidate, if not a potential winner. But the thing is about a team. You can't just form a big 3 and win a World Series. We saw with the Anaheim Angels of Los Angeles, you can have 2 of the top 5 best players and not sniff October. The Royals right now have a decision to make. And if they don't start playing better, they're not going to add to this team, and it will be a wasted year for Mr. Witt, and that would be a concern if I'm a Royals fan.
Matt, David, we certainly appreciate it going through Matt Snyder's latest power rankings. And just a reminder, you can find those rankings right now live over on CBSSports.com. Always good to see you, gentlemen. Getting a look at the MLB games tonight. Yankees and the Guardians kicking things off at 6:10 Eastern. And then Matt's #1 team in the power rankings for now. It could change, of course, next week. It's still only April. The Padres heading to Detroit to take on the Tigers. And then we have an NL East matchup with the Phillies and the Mets at 7:10.